Hello everybody, my name is Melody and I am a naturalist here at Rockwood Nature Center, and today we're going to be talking to you a little bit about some snakes, which are the most prevalent reptiles here in Virginia. Most importantly, I'm going to be discussing the venomous snakes of Virginia, so that maybe if you all find a snake in your yard, you might not be quite so fearful of it and wonder what it is, because you'll have an idea already. So, Virginia has 30 species of snakes, and of those 30 species, they're found all over the state. So no matter where you go in Virginia, you're going to be able to see snakes. It's just a fact of life. Of those 30 species, though, only 3 of them are venomous snakes. So 3 out of 30, it's a pretty small ratio, right? Of the 3 snakes that are venomous, only 1 is actually located all throughout the state and here in Chesterfield County. So that's a pretty small ratio. So what are the main ways that we can tell a venomous snake from a non-venomous snake? Well, I'm going to tell you a couple of things that you can use to try and figure that out. The first trick, which is pretty well known, is that many people think that the venomous snake has a head that's shaped a lot like the arrowhead of a Native American arrow point, whereas a harmless snake does not have that arrowhead shape right there. So the trick with this is to look at the head and see if it's wider and sort of angled out like that. Now, the problem is some snakes, some harmless snakes, will actually mimic a venomous snake and be able to flatten their heads out to make this kind of shape as well. So it's not 100% accurate to always look at the head shape. But if you see a snake with an arrowhead-shaped head, you just want to stay away from it no matter what, just to be on the safe side. Another trick that a lot of people use is to look at the pupils of the snake's eyes. Now, a venomous snake's eye will have a up and down vertical slit like a cat, whereas a non-venomous snake's eye will actually have a round pupil, just like you and me. If you look at each other, you can see the round pupil in your eyes. That's a non-venomous snake, whereas a venomous has the up and down slit. The third thing that you can do to identify a venomous versus a non-venomous snake is to look and see if it has a pit, this big kind of hole on the side of its head. All 3 of our venomous snakes here in Virginia are pit vipers, and they use that pit as a heat sensor to help them hunt. Now they also do have a regular nostril, you can see that right here, regular nostril, and a non-venomous snake has a regular nostril, but you'll see there's no pit between its eye and its nostril. So then all 3 venomous snakes do have a pit. So those are 3 tricks that you can use in order to try and identify whether you have a venomous or non-venomous snake in your presence. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 3 different types and how you can maybe identify further which type you might have in your yard. The first type we'll talk about is a rattlesnake. Now everybody is probably familiar with a rattlesnake. They've got the rattle on the back of their tails that shakes as a warning for you to keep away. We actually have 2 different kinds of rattlesnakes here in Virginia. We have a canebrake, which is this red color here, located mostly in southeastern Virginia, and that is actually an endangered species. We also have a timber rattler, which likes the mountainous areas, so that's located more out in the Blue Ridge Mountains and in the western part of the state. You'll notice that we don't really have any here in Chesterfield or in the central Virginia area, so this is something you probably won't see in your own yard, but you might see if you go traveling to another part of the state. Rattlers come in a variety of colors. They can be anything from yellow to black. They usually have kind of indistinct blotches on their back. They don't follow a general pattern. So it can be kind of hard to identify them. If you can't see their tail and you can't see their head, you might not know whether it's a rattler or not. The general rule of thumb is just stay away from anything that you can't ID. The next snake we have is, in Virginia, is the cottonmouth. The cottonmouth snake is a water-loving snake, so it lives in marshes and swamps, and therefore it's generally located in the southeastern corner of Virginia where we have marshes and swamps. The cottonmouth is also sometimes called a water moccasin because it likes water, but it gets the name cottonmouth because when it's threatened, it doesn't have a rattle like a rattlesnake does, so what it does is open its mouth really, really wide, like I have here. It opens its mouth really wide and tries to make itself look really scary, and the inside of its mouth is all white, and that's how it got the name cottonmouth. Now, cottonmouth is generally a darker colored snake. It can range anywhere from a really dark green to a black. If it's not so dark that you can't see the bands, then the bands will actually be shaped like hourglasses, where they're skinny towards the backbone and wider as they get towards the belly. A little bit hard to see it on this one, but you can take a look afterwards and check it out. Now, because it likes water, most people think that any water snake is a cottonmouth, but that's not exactly true. We do have non-venomous water snakes here in Virginia. The way to tell whether or not you have a cottonmouth in the water is a cottonmouth can flatten out its body and actually float entirely on top of the water as it swims, so it floats on top. Whereas a non-venomous water snake cannot flatten out its body like that, so its head and neck might stick up out of the water, but the rest of its body is under the surface and it swims under the surface that way. And lastly, we have the copperhead snake. The copperhead is, as you can see, located all throughout Virginia. Everywhere you go, you're going to find copperheads. It's one of the most prevalent venomous snake here in Virginia. Now, copperheads range in color in browns. There can be pinkish brown to tan, but they always have very prominent hourglass-shaped blotches on their backs. They get their name copperhead because on the sides of their head and a little bit over the top, there's actually a copperish color. But their whole body is not a copperish color, unlike some people think. So the copperhead, because it's widespread and because it has blotches on its body, is one of actually the most incorrectly ID'd snakes out there. People will kill any snake they find in their yard that has blotches on it because they think it's a copperhead. Unfortunately, that's not usually the case. As I said, there's 30 snakes in Virginia, only 3 of them are venomous, so in all likelihood you just killed a non-venomous snake. But the copperhead here, as you can see, has those bands, and that's the easiest way to tell it because none of the other non-venomous snakes have the hourglass-shaped bands. So we've covered the three venomous snakes in Virginia, and I just want to say before we go anywhere that no matter what snake you're looking at out there in the wild, you always want to be very respectful of the snake's territory. Know that you are in his home, not the other way around, and always give snakes a wide berth, even if you think it's not a venomous snake. Snakes can be tricky; they like to mimic each other, and it's always hard to identify. And like I said, a lot of people will kill them. They say that the only good snake is a dead snake. And that's unfortunate because snakes actually are very good for our environment. They help control rodent and bird populations, and they're good indicators of a healthy ecosystem. If you have snakes in your yard, that's probably because you have a good ecosystem there. So snakes are actually very beneficial to the environment and to humans. So I hope that now that you've been educated a little bit about the snakes that we have here in Virginia, that you can understand them and respect them and agree with me that all snakes are good snakes, even the venomous ones. Thank you very much for your time.